Hello everyone, today we're going to be looking at a trending article in the New York Times, and it is titled, "An Old Medicine Grows New Hair for Pennies a Day, Doctors Say." So I'm actually in my vacation home right now. This is not my normal surroundings, so if you've been with me for a long time, you know that already. I'll tell you a bit more about it in an upcoming video. If you want to just hit that like and subscribe, that would mean a lot to me, and we will continue to discuss hair loss and all things related. But let's get right into this. Okay, an old medicine. What are they talking about in this article? That is interesting because it is sort of set up like it's breaking news, but it actually isn't breaking news. I did read the article and I wanted to report on it and sort of break it down for you guys here. It is about oral minoxidil. What is oral minoxidil? Okay, oral minoxidil is Rogaine, basically, which is also minoxidil. So you've got your Rogaine sort of topical, which is what you would put on your scalp. It comes in either a solution, it comes in the foam, which is the formulation that I like the best. It also comes sometimes in a spray. I've heard of it coming that way, but it's something you can also take in pill format. And before we go any further, of course, my usual disclaimer that I am not a doctor, I am not a pharmacist, I am not a biochemist, I am just a lay person trying to get to the bottom of this. And this is actually not even, of course, my own reporting. This is just like commentary on the reporting done by the person who wrote this article, Gina Colada. So thanks to Gina Colada for putting this wonderful, informative article together for all of us to read, and we're gonna break it down. So the entire gist of this basically is that there are a number of dermatologists out there who have found that oral minoxidil, so in other words, minoxidil pills given at a very low dose, so less than what you would use them for, and used as off-label, and we can discuss that in a minute, have found it to be effective for some of their patients in treating hair loss. So oral minoxidil is not labeled. So in other words, it wasn't ever approved by the FDA or in Canada, our approval system, to be used to treat hair loss. It is actually a blood pressure pill, as far as I understand. Again, not a complete expert on this. But what had happened was when they were giving this out to use as an oral medication, it was found to have this sort of bonus effect of growing back hair. And sort of that's how the whole reason and way that Rogaine as a topical began to be introduced into people many, many years ago. I mean, for women, it was approved in, I think, 1992, and some years before that for men. So it has been on the market very long time as a topical. When I say topical, I mean something that you put on top of your scalp, not as a pill. The pill has never been and has still not been approved as of this recording for use for hair loss, but doctors and dermatologists can give it to you anyway if they decide that it is something that would benefit you. They have their own discretion to use it as off-label. So that's what the word off-label means. It means it's not like what you would read on the box for it to be used as. If you go on the website, it won't say that it's used for that, but doctors can use their discretion to give it to you if they think that you will, of course, get a therapeutic benefit from it. So for those of you curious about my experience with oral minoxidil, I have never used it, and my husband and I were chatting about this, and he's like, why haven't you just taken the pill for it? It seems like it would be easier than sort of buying more expensive Rogaine, right? He did make sense when he said that, but I was like, well, I have been a cancer patient. I was on like a clinical trial. I've always had other really strong medicines that I've been taking. I won't go through all of them right now, but I just did not feel like I wanted to ask about having sort of an oral minoxidil also thrown into the mix, because I was getting good enough results with the topical stuff, and that is very much just me. I mean, everybody's different. Some people are really looking for perfection. I am not the person who's ever really aiming for perfection when it comes to her body. I am happy with just good enough, and so my results with the topical stuff were just good enough, and if it's not broke, don't fix it. I wasn't having any bad reactions from using it. I found it to be effective. I found it to be easy to remember, so I always just figured, why bother? So that's me and my rationale, but why do people even take pills for it anyway? Well, according to this article, there are some patients out there who, for whatever reason, can't use the topical, and what it seemed to boil down to, from what I understand in reading this, is that some people have allergic reactions to it. Some people it doesn't work very well, and so then they decide to try the oral route, the pill route. There is an interesting mechanism behind why it works orally. So when you use the topical form of minoxidil, the topical stuff has to actually be converted by your hair roots into an active form, and not everybody's hair roots are really good at doing this or effective at doing this. And so when you take the oral medication version of it, the oral minoxidil, it doesn't need to go through any conversion process to become an active form, and so that's why it can be more effective, theoretically, at least according to this article and these dermatologists, in regrowing hair for those people who might not have had much good effect from using Rogaine topically, or may have used it and it worked, but then they found that they were having like allergic reactions, like scalp reactions, skin reactions to it. What is also reported in the article is that about 20 years ago, this sort of happened by I guess, trial and error, you might want to call it. An Australian dermatologist had a patient, and that patient was using Rogaine, but she was having scalp irritation, I think is the side effect that she had noted, and it just was not effective for her because of that reason, but it was effective just generally for her. So he decided to just try her on a really low dose of oral minoxidil, thinking that that might be a sort of method to get it into her body and for it to be effective. And lo and behold, it was effective for her. That was 20 years ago. This patient apparently is still taking the oral version of this. However, what's interesting is that it was not a whole pill. It was not like the amount that you would take for, you know, blood pressure issues, which is what is normally prescribed for, but rather a complete fraction. I think that I read that he started her like on a quarter of the actual pill dose. What I read later on is that an effective dose could even be 1/40th. So that is a really, really, really low dose. 1/40th of a pill. So that's just obviously a teeny tiny amount. So this same doctor then reported that it was effective in 100 women. He presented his findings at a conference in Miami in 2015. In 2017, I think he published these findings, but it wasn't a proper study. So he really does urge, at least according to this article anyway, there to be actual proper studies done on it. You know, your sort of gold standard type studies, which have not happened as of yet. It also says that this doctor treated 10,000 patients with this particular format of using minoxidil, which is super interesting. So the takeaway for me and the interesting thing about this article was that the doctors that were interviewed did not seem very hopeful that this will ever go to actual clinical trial. And the reason being is that there just probably isn't very much money in it right now. I mean, if we're talking a 40th of a pill and we know that minoxidil is already available generically, I mean, even the topical stuff is available generically, and I'm sure the pills themselves don't cost very much money. If you're just looking at a 40th of that, there might not be the profitability to bring this to market and to fund those huge studies, which is kind of unfortunate, right? Because if you can take such a tiny dose, like I personally didn't realize it could be as low as 1/40th. Again, I'm not a pharmacist, I'm not a doctor, I'm just sort of talking about what I read in this article. That is just a tiny amount. I didn't realize it was that small. If there are no side effects and if it's super, super cheap compared to the topical stuff, maybe they're on something. It's just, I don't know. I find the whole thing kind of interesting. It seems almost more like a word of mouth thing that women hear about from other women or hear about from their doctors. And I do get asked questions about this from time to time. What do I think of it? I don't really have an opinion. I really can't have an opinion because I've never tried it and therefore I can't recommend it to you or not. You know, what was clear to me was also that, you know, general practitioners, your sort of family doctor might not be sort of at the cutting edge of prescribing this kind of stuff, but your dermatologist will probably be much more aware of the world of oral minoxidil for treating hair loss. And if that is something that is interesting to you, something you want to look into, of course, discuss it with your doctor or get a referral to a dermatologist and do all the stuff you need to do to see if this is something that's going to work for you. And I think actually I might put this on my list of things to ask my dermatologist about next time I go for a visit, because I'm curious. Maybe I would go on this. I'm certainly much more open to it reading this article. So I think that that was one huge benefit, was just sort of bringing it to the public eye. All right, I hope that was useful to you. If it was, be sure to give this video a big ol' thumbs up and we will see you next time. Thanks for watching.